The biggest challenge with this home was that everything was chopped up. When you walked through the front door, you were kind of like going through a 42-inch wide hallway, and then you'd make a sharp right into the living room, which was long and narrow, and there was no space for any kind of comfortable furniture. Everything was kind of jammed up against the windows. And then the kitchen was completely blocked off. There was a doorway from the living room and then a small doorway from the hallway, but there was a staircase to go upstairs, and you walk straight into a wall. And for Geoff and Tara, they have 2 young boys, and Tara would be in the kitchen cooking and she could not see what these boys were doing. So when I suggested, we can take out all of these walls and create this beautiful open concept, entertaining main floor, they were all in. Hi, I'm Carolyn Wilbrink. I'm the owner and creative director of CW Design & Co. and welcome to our Burloak project. One of the biggest, boldest choices I made for this design was they had a patio sliding door that went out to their back deck, and they had nothing else. There was a small window over their original sink. And I did the layout so many different times, and I was like, listen, I said, we're really limiting ourselves with this sliding door in the position that it's in. And I suggested just eliminating the patio door and actually doing their range in front of 3 windows. So adding 2 more windows next to their sink window, and then doing the range right in front of these 3 windows, because there was also an existing bulkhead that I wanted to make feel intentional. We couldn't eliminate this bulkhead, and I wanted to make it feel like a custom range hood. So that's what we did. We tiled the bulkhead, we tiled all within the 3 windows and have like really deep inset windows. And then we did this flush mount range hood fan that just looks so sleek, very contemporary. And we went with beautiful Benjamin Moore Vintage Vogue cabinets because Tara and Geoff absolutely love everything outdoors. They love their plants, and that was kind of my inspiration when I came in here. They had so many plants, and I was like, why don't we just pull a green? I feel like that's your vibe here. Very natural, very earthy. They kind of pushed back a little bit on the depth of the color, but once they saw it in the actual kitchen, they were over the moon. So because we had this bulkhead, I didn't want to have the cabinets sit underneath the bulkhead like they originally did. I wanted these cabinets that flanked the range to go from floor to ceiling. So what you don't know is that that bulkhead still runs through, but the doors closed, they look like they go right to the ceiling. I also wanted the range to be a focal point. I really wanted to flank the range with 2 matching pantries, and I thought it was really nice to have that centered on the island. That was kind of my intention behind that. And then once we kind of got the layout, we went into colors, and Geoff and Tara absolutely are obsessed with plants. So I thought, you guys love greens so much. Let's go a little bold, step out of your comfort zone, trust me on this, and let's do a beautiful deep green. And we went with Vintage Vogue, which they absolutely loved, especially when Geoff showed me the faucet that he wanted to use, the beautiful Perrin & Rowe South Bank bridge faucet. It is a satin English gold, and it just was such a great contrast against the green. My favorite finish is definitely a lacquered brass, but you also need to understand as a client that that is a living finish. And for Geoff and Tara, they are both busy parents, and that's something you either have to live with as it patinas, or it is something that does take work and there is some maintenance with it. And Geoff really had his eye on this South Bank satin English gold. So I was like, you know what, let's do it. We went with matching hardware from M-Tech. We did the Jasper pulls in the satin brass, and they're a very close match. And I do love that they have a bit more of a transitional feel to them. They're not traditional in any way, and they really work with the overall vibe in this space. In almost all of my projects, I try to incorporate a Shaw's fireclay sink. And because Geoff and Tara's kitchen was more of a transitional design, we went with the Shaw's double bowl, low divide, modern shaker, which definitely has a more contemporary feel. Everything was very dark and heavy before. They had dark honey oak cabinets with extremely dark and dated slate tile floors, and everything just kind of blended together. And I think that's where they were a little afraid of going dark on the cabinetry, but I said, you know, like, we're gonna change out the flooring. We'll do a beautiful lighter, like kind of white oak that has some warmth to it, some varying veining and like some different tones in it. And then we found this absolutely gorgeous quartzite. It's called Geoff Tara crystal quartzite, and it's from Brazil, and it is absolutely stunning. It pulled all of these different warm tones in. There's some gold, there's some rust, there's browns, creams, grays, and it really just worked so well with everything that we did in here. When I first walked into Geoff and Tara's kitchen, I kind of took a look around and I wanted to see what was really important to them. And one of the things that were very important to them was coffee. And I'm also a huge coffee drinker. So I wanted to create a space that was just zoned for coffee and for smoothies and, you know, for mixing drinks when they're entertaining. Because in their original kitchen, they had this tiny little section that they did their big, beautiful coffee maker on, and it just did not work. So that was probably one of the first things that I gave them. And then the second thing on their wish list, I actually offered up the idea of integrated appliances, and Geoff kind of was like, well, what's that gonna look like? I'm like, you won't know they're there. You're just gonna see handles, that's it. And he was like, if I can get away from fingerprints on stainless steel, we're completely down. And they were so thrilled when they saw the fridge go in and the dishwasher, and everything is just seamless. And that was one of the biggest things, I think, for them. Another thing that was, you know, kind of controversial at first, we didn't know how this would go, was eliminating a space for a dining table. But because they're such a busy family, the hub of their home is the kitchen. I mean, I feel like they gained so much more with this massive island. We have the same amount of seating, they have storage on the back side of the island, and then they have all of the function on the other side, and everything feels so much more connected. And for Geoff and Tara, this works for how their family lives their lives, and that's what's important. We had to reframe the entire back wall because we added the new windows, and because we eliminated the sliding patio door, that was their only way to get into their garage. They have a back door to the garage, and they would go out the sliding door and into the garage. So I said to Geoff, why don't we just add a door from the house into the garage? That would make way more sense. And at first he was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like that. That's all he ever talks about now is the garage door and how easy it is to get back and forth from the garage and into the kitchen. But he is really excited about it because he's got a golf simulator out there. Geoff and Tara really wanted their bathroom to have a spa retreat vibe. They wanted a place that they could go at the end of the day, take a bath, disconnect from the world, and just really, really enjoy this space. It was so dark before, so they wanted to do completely the opposite. And our jumping off point was the beautiful Gloria White quartzite that I found at Cava Surfaces. Once I found this stone, it had some beautiful kind of like gold veining through it, some brown. It did have some warmth. I still felt like we needed to bring a bit more warmth. So they love the floors so much. I said, why don't we just kind of tie back to the oak flooring and do an oak floating vanity? And that really added the warmth, especially with the apothecary faucets in the antique gold. And then just to add a bit more of a contemporary edge, we used some matte black hardware from M-Tech, and it just kind of is such a great mix. But because the walls were now the Gloria White quartzite, they did, you know, feel bright. So I wanted to tone everything down with the flooring, and I went with a 4 by 20 inch porcelain tile in a beautiful stone color. And we did that in a herringbone pattern on the floor. It really just draws your eye in. And because the floating vanity, it really gives the illusion of more floor space, and it's really pretty, and it just adds to the overall look. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project. And if you'd like more information or more inspiration, check me out on Instagram, and do not forget to subscribe.